Well, Jack, again, it wasn't recording before, but we're on. It's so wonderful to meet you. It's an honor. Thank you for taking a minute out.
No, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you, Joe. And I can't imagine where you heard of me because I'm really not much on social media, but it makes me happy to know that I'm out there somewhere.
Well, I'm a child of the 80s, so I've seen you around on the media quite a bit, and I know about your
Uh,
work. So, yeah, there's a lot of things at 52 that I've kind of pulled in from the VHS generation and from just regular TV, but I know very well about what you've done with your work. And as I mentioned before we got on, I am always inspired by the souls, the work that you're doing to further voices that need to be furthered. And in this very strange political, social environment we live in right now, I think it's more important than ever to put the facts and put truth out there in front of the noise.
I appreciate that. That is pretty much my mission. Um, I first got into this publicly and actively when I realized that the male point of view just was not very well understood. And possibly that's because it's not very well articulated and that's possibly because men just generally don't like to talk a lot, words, words, words.
Yeah.
But when people who don't have your best interests at heart are using their words to diminish you or to disadvantage you, well, the best response is to go with words, and words do have a lot of power.
Absolutely. So let's begin this journey here before we get into your good work by asking you this. The pandemic and living through that time period really reshaped and refocused a lot of things for us. How much of living through that has influenced the way that you live life and do work today?
Well, I was retired at the time the pandemic hit, so I was pretty much staying home and working from home anyhow. So it didn't really have a huge impact on me, although I do remember somewhat, I don't know, fondly or maybe more like with embarrassment, but we didn't know any better. I mean, my wife and I, we actually wiped down our groceries when they came in, and we actually we have a picture of us hanging our mail on a clothesline to get it out into the sun
Yeah.
because nobody knew
Yeah.
how the virus was being transmitted. But personally, and for my work, very, very little effect, I guess. The only real impact I would say it had, which is still not confirmed to my satisfaction, at least, is that there is a huge spike in domestic violence during during COVID, and I think that's highly contentious. I've seen studies and surveys, reports from the various police departments that say no, actually it went down during COVID. But then again, I have to say I have tremendous skepticism and suspicion of anything to do with women's portrayal, the feminist machine's portrayal of domestic violence, because the issue of domestic violence has been horribly politicized. It's completely anti-science. And, as Woodward and Bernstein said, follow the money.
Yeah.
The Violence Against Women Act is quite a cash cow for Big Pharma.
Yeah.
The budget for VAWA, Violence Against Women Act related programs is $1 billion a year in the United States.
Wow.
So I, I am very skeptical at the idea that, oh, well, you need to give more money, please, Mr. and Mrs. Philanthropy, because COVID is going on. And you know how it is when men are cooped up with women, they can't control themselves and they beat up on the women. And I don't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I, what I want to do real quick to give everybody kind of a handle on what's going on, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. And the kids want to know who you are. They want to know what you've done in your career, the good work you've done. So it's career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Well, that is such a great question. Such a great question because it really does require me to get right to the essence of it. It's a little difficult because third graders don't know a whole lot about gender issues, don't know a whole lot about, how men and women as adults interact. But it's a great question, and I will do my best to try to answer it. And I think I would say, just off the top of my head, that you know how it is when you have a friend and like maybe you share a game or you share a toy, but then that friend decides that they want to change the game. They want to change the rules for what their interests are, what they're good at. And the way they want to change the rules isn't really the same as the way you would like to change the rules.
Yeah.
But they get mad when you don't agree with them. And that's sort of what I think has happened for adults. And that is that men and women basically got along, but then a lot of women got it in their heads, in their minds, that things were not fair for women. And that very well was true. But they didn't ask if things were fair for men. And so instead of asking what would men like to change, they just went ahead and changed it the way they wanted to change it in ways that disadvantaged men, and it made men sad.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
made men sad. And there's a lot of problems between men and women these days because a lot of men don't feel like they were treated fairly.
Yeah. That's a great answer. I love it. So take me back to when you were in the third grade. What was your dream life? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Let's see, third grade. Let's see. Well, I had Sister Florence. I mean, that's how I'm going to, pin who I was back then. I had Sister Florence. She was pretty cool. I liked her a lot. Third grade. Oh, well, I think I probably wanted to be president.
Yeah.
I remember, don't know if I was in third grade exactly, but I do remember being in the car with my mother. We had just parked at a department store, and somehow it came up, what do you want to be? And I said, I think, I'd like to, maybe I just said politics. Um, and she said, oh, honey, that is such a nasty business. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do remember that this probably is too advanced for a third grader, but I thought the idea of public relations sounded good to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew in third grade what a public relations person did. Actually, I don't think I knew until college what a public relations person did.
Yeah.
And I know now that public relations people are not really just about being nice and talking about their company. It's about manipulating the message.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
And that made it much less appealing. Um, so third grade, I was sort of in public life, I guess, being out there speaking and talking in one way or another.
yeah.
Um, I was kind of a funny kid. I was one of seven kids. Uh, I used to make people laugh. Sometimes I would make people laugh at times that were really, not ideal for my mother. And she would always tell the other kids, don't give him an audience. Yeah.
Well, you've gotten quite an audience. Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised. What were some of these foundational elements that were planted into you to seek change, to be an activist, to be somebody that moves other human beings?
Another great question. I was one of seven kids, five boys. My mother and father were both in the house, so there were three people of the female persuasion and six people of the male persuasion. And the idea that men have all the power and women are powerless was, completely, utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
The three females in my family had a lot of power. Um, on the other hand, my father had a lot of disempowerment. He was an old-time family doctor with seven kids, and he worked his ass off, and he did not get a lot of props, did not get a lot of thanks, did not get a lot of appreciation from his kids. He came home sort of tired and grumpy. He was an old-time family doc, as I said, and man, he worked a lot of hours. He even did house calls up until even past retirement. He would go back out to see old patients who were relying on him. Um, he became an alcoholic, largely, I think, because of the alienation he felt at home, where he came home to a family that didn't appreciate him when he was tired and grumpy. I do know very clearly that when he died at the age of 70, which is 3 years younger than I am now,
Yeah.
when he died, um, and we were at the funeral home, and his patients came to pay their respects. Lots of them, lots of them, lots of them came to pay their respects. And they would, sort of buttonhole us and want to talk to us about what a kind, caring, warm, loving, gentle man Dr. Kammer was. And my brothers and sisters and I looked at each other like, who are they talking about?
Yeah.
So, the lesson there is that my father gave at the office.
Yeah.
He was a wonderful doctor, warm, kind, caring, loving, possibly because, well, he loved being a doctor, and he felt energized by them. He felt appreciated by them in a way that he didn't by his own self-involved, stupid, selfish kids. Um, when he died, there was really nobody who was eager to do the eulogy because it was a difficult proposition.
Yeah.
How do you honor this wonderful man as one of his children to whom he was not such a great father?
Yeah.
I was just not going to have it that some priest who didn't know him at all was going to pull out the boilerplate about, oh, Dr. Kammer was so wonderful and warm and loving and kind, such a great father, and his children are all brokenhearted that he's gone. And I wasn't going to have that. That would have been a complete disrespect for my father. And so I told my family, I said, look, I'll do the eulogy. If nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it. I even had to audition with the priest.
Wow.
He wanted to know what I was going to say, maybe because he knew that there was some disappointment among the kids about their father, and he wanted to make sure I wasn't going to trash him
Yeah.
in the eulogy. So I went to him and told him what I was, that why I wanted one of his kids to be giving the eulogy. It wasn't until the morning of the eulogy, the morning of the funeral, that I realized, and what I wanted to say. And what I said was the truth,
Yeah.
which was he was a doctor, and he spent a lot of time with people who needed him. And that meant he didn't spend a lot of time with his kids,
Yeah.
but he was a doctor. That's who he was. And many of you here today know what a wonderful doctor he was. And I ended with the line by saying, and it was because he was a doctor that he met our mother, who was a nurse in the hospital where he was a doctor.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended it. But I have to tell you that it was very clear to me that I did not want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
My father said, look, if you ever want to be a doctor, be a dermatologist,
Yeah.
because they don't get called out in the middle of the night and
Yeah.
they have nice, bankers hours.
Sure.
Um, but none of us wanted to be doctors because we saw how hard he worked.
Yeah.
Uh, and he loved it, but he was exhausted.
Yeah.
And so he came home grumpy sometimes. Um, so, that was my dad. And as much as I do feel like I missed a lot that I wish I had gotten from him, I do know that I got a lot of good stuff from him.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I got from him is why I'm here today,
Yeah.
which is basically when you feel something deeply and passionately, you stand up for it.
Yeah.
And that rings in my mind very loud and clear. I know my dad would be proud of me for seeing what I believe to be a very significant social dysfunction, not paying attention at all to the social and emotional needs of men and boys, and saying something about it.
Yeah.
that's that's my family situation.
So who operated as a hero? Who was that bedrock for you in your life that inspired you to do all this good work?
Well, I guess before I knew that JFK was a philanderer, I had a lot more respect for him.
Yeah.
Uh, he, I went to a Catholic school. As I mentioned, I had a sister, Florence, a Catholic nun. Um, and we were all excited about the first Catholic president. The image of JFK back then was just, so squeaky clean and just, a wonderful guy. And it, he seemed like a really nice person who cared about people and was funny and nice and well spoken. So I would say he was probably my hero.
Yeah.
And then when he got shot and killed when I was in seventh grade, that was quite a shocker. And there is a related issue to what we're talking about today. In seventh grade, we were praying for JFK because we knew he was shot. We didn't know he was dead. Uh, the principal came to our door, our seventh grade classroom door. This was Sister Dolorine. We loved her too. She was strict, but she was the principal, so she had to be. Sister Dolorine came to the door, cracked open the door, sort of whispered in a loud whisper to Sister George Mary, whom I did not like at all and who did not like me at all. He's dead. He's dead. Sister George Mary stood up behind her desk and she leaned over her desk and with eyes as big as saucers, she said, "Do you see what you boys grow up to be? Murderers." Which really made no sense at all.
Oh,
And I am very thankful that I had the presence of mind to say, wait a second, what the hell are you saying here?
yeah.
The man whose death you are upset about is a boy who did not grow up to be a murderer.
Yeah.
And then I questioned myself quickly to say, that was a pretty cheap shot
Yeah.
about me as a boy, as a man, as a future man, as a
Yeah.
male. How many other little tidbits of self-hatred and shame have been injected into me that were much more subtle than that I didn't even notice, but
Yeah.
still that got into my psyche.
Yeah. Yeah. What has it been for you all these years to continue to do this work? You're doing heavy work, you're standing up for people, you're consistently doing it. Yeah, it has to weigh you down, but you have to evolve. You're a human being yourself. What has been that every day for you to consistently do this at a high level?
Just sort of a confidence that I'm not crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The supposition that maybe you're crazy is, pretty strong. And I'm sure there are all kinds of people who are eccentric um, and who eventually are proven to have, some good eccentricities. A lot of eccentrics are just sort of crazy. And, you have to weigh that too. Maybe I'm just one of those eccentrics who's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but then you recognize there were a lot of eccentrics who were regarded as crazy and people laughed at them and said this is ridiculous until, maybe even after they were dead, it wasn't recognized that they were making a good point. So I think it's just confidence. I mean, it just seems so clear to me how many problems in our society for everyone, not just men, not just boys, but women and girls, for families, for communities, for the nation as a whole, how many problems are rooted in the idea that you don't need to pay any attention to the social issues of men and boys. We don't hear men complaining. Well, why don't you hear men complaining?
Yeah.
Why? Don't they know that nobody really wants to hear that they've got problems and they're going to get some fake sympathy? Like, oh, poor baby. Let me take out my little tiny violin for you as if you guys don't run the world.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just so clear that there are so many errors in our social policy making machinery uh, about ignoring and belittling the very, very deep and powerful social and emotional issues of
Yeah.
men and boys.
Yeah. So, of this life of accomplishment that you've led, what are you the proudest of? What's the one thing that rises to the top for you?
I do not feel that I have a life of accomplishment. I
Yeah.
feel that I have a life of effort.
Right.
I don't feel that I have much accomplishment. Um, the media, the government, most people still do not want to hear about male gender issues in any meaningful way that gets the traction that I think it needs, these issues need to get. And I think that, if I have an accomplishment ever in my life, what I hope it will be is that I figured out a way to, as nicely as I could, although, I don't want to go out of my way to be nice. I just want to go straight ahead and just say what needs to be said. But I hope I can say what needs to be said in a way that doesn't make women feel like I'm blaming them. Because it's the idea that you're blaming women that really scares people.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, women don't want to be blamed. And number two, people around them get scared if you blame women.
Yeah.
Um, so we need to get to the point where we can say, look, it's not because women are bad that they sometimes do bad things to men and boys. And it's not because women are bad that they sometimes behave selfishly. And and it's not because women are bad that they sometimes, even though they will deny they have power, sometimes use their power in ways that are unjust toward men and boys. It's not because they're bad, it's because they're human.
Yeah.
And can we please acknowledge that sometimes women will do bad things to men? And I think that one of the messages I need to pull out is, to imagine how ineffective the women's movement would have been, how ineffective the women's movement would be if women were reluctant, afraid, too timid to ever say that men ever did anything wrong. I mean, the women's movement was sort of founded on the very real facts that men were raised to believe that in some very important ways, they were superior to women. And we use those stereotypes of female inferiority and male superiority to justify keeping women in their lane at home, taking care of the family and the kids and the house, and keeping them out of our lane, which was the world of careers and business and making money.
Yeah.
Similarly, there are a lot of stereotypes that women use in the opposite way. There are a lot of stereotypes about female superiority that serve to keep men out of their lane. Men are violent, men are mean, men are cruel, men are impatient, men are clueless, men can't multitask, blah, 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 blah. And oh, by the way, women are angelic and we create life, which they do not do. They incubate life, but they do not create it. The zygote and the zygote is the spark. The
Yeah.
sperm and the egg get together, boom, that's where the magic happens. The zygote sends out its own umbilicus and in its own placenta, and it's the zygote, the union of the man and the woman, that are the magic.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a stereotype of women. They're angelic, they're so wonderful and kind and patient. And yes, they are. Just like men are, really good in some ways in which they use to keep women out of their lane. Men, are smart. We are capable of logic. We can make tough decisions. We don't cry as much as women do at inappropriate times for what works in a business. Um, But we need to get to the point where we can ask women to acknowledge that yes, you do have some very nice perks in your lane. Primary relationships with your kids, primary relationships with the other women in the neighborhood. Your relationships are much richer and loving than men's relationships are typically, because our relationships are very transactional. You got to have a relationship with the people at work, but they don't love you and you don't love them.
Yeah.
For women, the people that you are in relationship with, you, they love you, you love them.
Yeah.
Your women friends in the neighborhood, in the community, you have very common interests. You're not competing against each other like the men are in business. You have very common interests. And so your relationships are much warmer, much kinder, much more caring. I guess, first time I'm thinking of this, very much like my father's relationships were with his patients.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, the idea that men have all the power, and isn't it great that men, or isn't it unfair that men have all of these advantages and poor women never have, we don't have anything. It's it's nonsensical. Women have a lot of wonderful things in their lives that men would very much have liked the opportunity to say, well, okay, you want equality where we are. You want full and equal access to the world of careers and business and government and politics and making money. Okay, we get that, because in a lot of ways it's pretty good, but you know what? In a lot of ways it sucks.
Yeah.
Um, and so we understand that in a lot of ways, being stuck at home all day with kids, that can probably suck, because too much of any good thing is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're not anywhere near having too much of this. And so we'd like to have some of that. We weren't asked what we would like. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't, it wasn't a situation of really listening to your stakeholders and your partners and really understanding their needs. No, that
Yeah.
wasn't done for men.
Yeah.
What was done for men was that we were cast as the oppressors. We oppress women. And because they were able to get across this idea in academia, in the media, in government, that men are oppressing women, a very Marxist idea. Um, because men are the oppressors, we don't need to talk to them about what they want.
Yeah.
They're mean to us. We don't have to talk to them in a negotiation. What we have to do to them is smash the patriarchy.
Yeah.
So we really need to recognize that there are a lot of good things in the women's traditional sphere, that no more than men wanted to give up the advantages they had in the traditional male sphere, women no more than that want to give up their traditional advantages in the female sphere. And I would suggest that it's very plausible that women are going to be even harder to convince to share that, because it's so much more wonderful in so many ways, at least in the ways that I value most,
Yeah.
so much more wonderful than what I was told was my place.
Yeah.
It's not what I want. It's not what
Yeah.
I wanted. I should go back and mention that in my childhood, the saddest thing I could think of every day was how these fathers had to get up in the morning, get in a car, ride a train, take a bus, and go somewhere, some office, some business, some place of work, all day away from their kids, and then come home when they were tired and sad and grumpy and stressed out, having completely missed their day with the kids.
Yeah.
You know how it's wrong even today. I mean, well, it would certainly be wrong anytime, but it doesn't happen so much today. But we know that if someone were to say to a little girl today, gee, Susie, you're really good at math, for a girl, that wouldn't be a good thing to say to her. That conveys a very backhanded message. It's not really a compliment. It's sort of a way of saying, girls don't do this.
Yeah.
Girls don't do math. They don't do science. They don't do sports. You know, maybe there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
What I used to hear as a little boy was, gee, Jack, you're really good with babies, for a boy.
Right.
And I didn't have any words for that, but I knew I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. And I know now that it was sort of a way of the culture saying, Jack, no, 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 no. If you want to grow up to be a happy man, a successful man, and be respected, and have a woman who loves you, you can't be. No, you got to get over here.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with the reason I'm here
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah. Which you've really come full circle here. If anyone wants to delve in further, malefriendlymedia.com, which has been behind you, they want to get your books, they reach out, any of the good business, is that the best place to go?
Yes.
Okay. Jack, this has been wonderful. It's been illuminating. I really appreciate you taking a little time out today, and it's been an honor.
Oh, no, no, no. It's been my honor, Joe. You really are a great podcast host. You really are. And I appreciate podcasting a ton,
Yeah.
because to me it's the most robust and civil marketplace for the exchange of ideas. And you in that wonderful space are a really wonderful podcaster. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been an honor, and I think this is the place where people come for therapy. It's a real good exchange of human emotions. So thank you for doing that today. I appreciate it. Best of luck, and hopefully we run into each other down the line. It would be wonderful.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Take care.